Davey? Well, hello, peculiars. We have quite a show for you tonight, and I wouldn't lie to you because you might detect it. Yeah. There's going to be murder. There's going to be fun. There's going to be Deborah Blum. Those almost rhyme. Not quite, but almost. We have some peculiars entering into the show right now in the audience, and we have Davey. Davey, are you excited? Wait, I don't hear you. You're still muted.
I'm very excited. Hi, everybody. Yeah, this was, I was telling them before the show, like 2 books in a week is challenging, but I got into the first book and the Tremors in the Blood, and I was like, you got to get that energy to start a second book. But I mean, Patty's book takes off, and you are in for that ride.
Yeah, so. It's everything has been really great. Yeah, we've got an Anthro Girls here. We've got Leanne is here. And Sareka, who always joins us from like really far, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning or something. She's a trooper. So it's exciting because these 2 books kind of work together in a really interesting way, I think, because on one hand, it's how do you solve a mystery? On the other hand, how do you get away with one? So it's kind of interesting. 1 a.m., she says. Amanda Johnson is here too, and she's with us. I know 2 books is a lot in a week. I have to tell you, though, they're fast reads. And the other fun thing is we have a guest host with us today. Mm-hmm. So I want to welcome you all. As always, our guest hosts are authors who have been with us before. And tonight we have Deborah Blum, author of The Poisoner's.
I jumped the gun a little bit on it.
Oh, it's great. I love it. The Inksplosion was so excited that it happened faster than usual. Sadie said they listened to both books on the way home from Burning Man, which just seems super appropriate. Yeah. Tori's here too.
I feel like we need a report on. Maybe we need a 2-minute segment at the end of the show for a full report on Burning Man.
You know what? He did a giant boat. It was a desert ship. Go to our if you aren't members of our Facebook group, you should join as members of our Facebook group, and you get to see pictures of the amazing stuff that Ryan built to take off to Burning Man this year. So anyway, Deborah, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you back.
Thanks. It's great to be back again. I love this show.
It's so much fun. And of course, the song, for those of you who might not be familiar, the song that opens us up is Charming Disaster. And it's Blue Bottle Blues, which is, in fact, in honor of Deborah's book, The Poisoner's Handbook. And I think you have a little blue bottle, don't you, Deborah?
I do. So this is my poison bottle from the late 19th century. That's kind of cool if you get, I don't know how close I can get here, but they used to rib them so that if you were going into your cabinet in the middle of the night and you couldn't see anything, you could actually tell that the bottle was a poison bottle because of these ribs on it. This one actually says poison on it too. And they would color them so they would stand out. So I love them. They're kind of little warning colored poison things.
I love it. Blue Bottle Blues. Yes, it's very good. Well, we have two guests tonight for you. We have Patti McCracken and we have Amit Katwala, and they each wrote a very different kind of book. One is about the history of the lie detector, and the other is about a bunch of women who poison a bunch of guys, which is amazing. I mean, not in a good way. I'm just saying. Sarika says, how ghoulishly practical are those blue bottles? It's true. It's true.
They are.
Kristen Meston is here too. She's tied up rescuing a dog from the street. We're very, that's so on brand, says Anthro Girl. It's kind of what we do around here. We're all about animals and poison and death, things like that. Well, I want to introduce our authors briefly, but then I also want to pop into the announcement. So, Davey, do you want to sort of bring us in with our folks, and then we'll do announcements and a wrap?
Let's do it. It's a double explosion night. Hi, everybody.
Welcome to the show, Amit and Patti. I'm really excited because even though I'm not interviewing you, I rarely get to be on the show watching it happen. So I'm going to kind of sneak off into the distance after we do our announcements and let Deb take the reins.
I'm excited to do that.
Well, I'm happy to be here. So
you said you're not at home though, Patti. Are you traveling? Are you on the road?
I am traveling. I am in Baltimore, visiting friends and heading back to Martha's Vineyard after a summer off island. So my car's all packed. My two little birds are in the other room just with their little bags packed. So we're ready to go.
I don't think we can be sorry for someone who lives on Martha's Vineyard, Patti.
It is hard.
It is really no sympathy for me.
all the tears. And Amit, where are you coming to us from tonight?
I am in London.
You're in London. That's right.
Midnight. So
5 past midnight. So Sarika, who is at 1 o'clock in the morning. You guys are right on task here. Sarika is also an author who joins us quite frequently. So thank you for being up so late. It's so good to have you, and we're really happy to have you. Maybe we should have made a coffee drink instead of the cocktail that we normally have. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do the announcements, and then I'm just going to potter on out of here and leave you guys to it. But I will be around, guys. I'm in the background. So announcements. First things first. Please make sure that you have the chat on. There's a live chat feed that allows you to see all of the questions and comments that are happening in real time. If you have questions, and you should, type them into that, and then we will bring them up and pop them on screen throughout the course of the show. You can reach us in all of those other things like Facebook and whatnot, but the best way to reach us is actually our newsletter. The Peculiar newsletter is how we send out all of the information, including links to the show, and this is a VIP show as well. So next up, we love it when people join. I think it's our YouTube. Is it our YouTube thing? Yes. No, Patreon. Yeah, we like that even more. If you want to join for the VIP shows, of course, I'm preaching to the choir here because all of you are VIP members if you're watching the show right now. But it is wonderful to have you. We are about to announce some new, we're about to announce a new season and new swag. And we've got some really fun, this is a sweatshirt with, that's upside down. I should have planned this better. A sweatshirt with reading Darwin on it for Peculiar Book Club, and we've got another one that says, let's see, it's not like be gay, do crimes. It's do science, read books. Do science, read books. Darwin the scientist. Yeah. So that's coming up too, and you get that for being a VIP. And the next one. Oh, yes, the cocktail. Book cocktail. So these, I do not create these. I am not creative enough to create these. All the cocktails would just be me drinking whiskey. But instead, we have Kat, oh, yes, it is very exciting. So cute. I'm glad to eat the sweatshirt. So cute. You're going to die. Yeah, I'm actually making some tweaks on it right now. I promise it's going to be really good, though. The cocktail for tonight was developed by Kat, who is our drinks maven here at the group. And we had a naming contest, and there were all kinds of namings. There were some really fun ones about poison, fun ones about, wires moving and about lie detection. But this is the one that won all the votes: blood, brine, and boneyards. And it's gin, sake, sweet vermouth, and kimchi brine, which sounds crazy, but is actually quite good. And this is for you guys. This is the to drink for when you are enjoying books about murder with kimchi as an ingredient as well. So all good stuff. Always join our YouTube channel as a subscriber. Super helpful to us. And then we have yet more content.
So we do a bonus podcast on our podcast feed, the Peculiar Movie Club, just to give you a little extra content for subscribing. And because of my love of movies, I do it with a co-host named Darren Cross. And we always theme it around the books for the month. So our August one, we finally got it done. It took forever. I think it took into September for us to get it done. But we did The Music Man. And I wasn't sure. It was right at the start of me not feeling well. And I was like, Darren, I don't know if I brought a lot of energy. But I listened back to it, and I think we had a really fun conversation about an old musical. So if you haven't listened to it yet, go check out The Music Man. It's only been up for a few days. But for this month, for the month of September, we decided to go with your book, and we themed it around your book, and we're doing Professor Marsden and the Wonder Women. So I know he's in the book, but he is not really a central character. But
yeah, it's the Tremors in the Blood Expanded Universe. This is great.
Yeah.
It's a little tangent.
Have you seen the movie? Did you have thoughts on it?
I read the book that it's based
Okay.
on, which obviously has a lot of backstory on Marston, who's sort of a peripheral character in my book, and my characters kind of take it from where he leaves it. I guess it's a good thing to watch alongside Tremors for sure.
Perfect. All right, so we always look to see if the themes cross over and things like that, but then we also have fun with the movie itself. So stay tuned. We'll try for September 19th. We always try to put it in the middle of the month in between our episodes, but who knows? Sometime in September, you'll get another podcast episode for us. It'll be a fun surprise.
Sadie says that movie's been on her to-be-watched pile for a while. Kristen Meston, by the way, has returned to us after rescuing a dog. And Susan Ballinger's here, as is Jennifer Pierce. So we've got more people. You guys, write up your questions. I'm going to kind of dive into the background a little bit here and let you guys take off. But I will say, while we don't have music tonight, we do have a comedy sketch, and Davey has made a double quiz.
Yes, from her. Comedy sketch from her this time. So we'll pop it in. It'll be a surprise in the middle of the show.
It'll be very awesome. All right. I'm checking out, but I'm here though. I'm here. I'm just in the background.
Deborah, take it away.
I just love having center stage here. So one of the things I always think, I write true crime. I think people who don't read true crime don't understand how much it's not just about death and murder, but also about the world around us, and illuminates different issues, social justice, criminal justice, as well as murder and who we are. And I actually raised this with both of these authors before the show, and I want to come back to it. But before we do that, you guys, very briefly, we're talking about two very different stories. The Tremors in the Blood is really based in California, with some of the pioneering, almost the inventors of criminal detection in the United States, if you look at someone like Gus Vollmer, for instance. And in addition, we move all the way to Hungary, early 20th century, which is what is known if you don't know too much about it, as a murder ring, a very successful murder ring, actually. So I'd like to ask each of you to start with why this? Why'd you pick this book? How did you decide that this was, the fascinating, terrible story you were going to tell? Amit, you're on the spot.
Well, yes, for me, it started out. So I tend to write about science and technology. So my day job is for Wired magazine. And my beat is kind of where science and culture overlap. So I ended up doing a piece for The Guardian, actually, was freelancing about modern forms of lie detection technology. So I was writing a lot of stories about, AI lie detectors and things like that. And that got me interested in the history. And then as I was diving into the history, I found these incredible true crime cases that had never really been written about at length, including the two that are the focus of Tremors in the Blood. One story about a guy who essentially plots his wife's murder, and may or may not have been involved in it. And then the story about a guy who ends up on death row and has to use the lie detector to try and exonerate himself. And I thought those stories were so compelling and told us so much that was relevant to the way that technology is used today that I really felt I needed to kind of dive in and I guess use history as a lens through which to examine the present, as you alluded to.
No, that makes a perfect. I always think, part of history is it tells you how you got here, right? Mm-hmm. Where'd we start? How did we get here? And I want to come back to your story because it also raises questions about technology starting in the very beginning, if we take the lie detector as an example. But let's jump over to Patti. Patti, your story of the angel makers, and you mentioned the origin of the name, and I wish you would discuss that a little bit now. The word angel maker, is in some ways a really horrifying story, and yet it's also a story, I think, about women without power maneuvering for power in some ways. Could you talk a little bit about the angel makers of Negrath?
Yeah, the angel maker, when I first went into the story, I knew they were called the angel makers. That was sort of surrounding it. But yes, when I found out it's the German word Engelmacher is a German word for an abortionist, and midwives were family planners at the time. And you never think about that. You think about, midwives bringing lives into the world, but you never think about them sort of working with the other women to abort babies. That was a big surprise to me. Yeah, although it's not the subject of my story, because they took it quite beyond that. But I found that I just found that incredibly interesting, and looking at the midwife as an absolute central and vital person in village life in Europe. In fact, at the time I found the story, I was living in Europe and I was freelancing from Europe. And when I told my neighbors, I was in Austria in a small village. And when I told my neighbors about this midwife in Hungary, and I'm going to go check it out, and every one of them was like, oh, a witch or a wise woman, And so, people my age and even younger still knew the history of midwives had this mystical quality about them, even, up until through World War I.
And just to stick with part of that, the mystical part of it, one more minute. I mean, if we look at different stories of murder rings around the world, I'm thinking about, again, we're all in the early 20th century, but there was a murder ring in Philadelphia in the 1930s. You know this one, the woman, they were working with their priests, they were killing their husbands, and they were casting curses. It strikes me in the most interesting way that there is something about these collections of women who get together, and go way beyond abortion, obviously, in your case, with the help of our friend arsenic, and yet they bring into it kind of midwifery and magic and superstition. All of that runs through your book in some really fascinating ways, I think. So, and do you see sort of a sense of magic? If I go back to the lie detector, Amit, I mean, people, when they first introduced technologies, and I think that was as true as it was in the early 20th century as it is now, we get this new technology, and it's this amazing, magical, new best thing, right? And there's just whole faith that it's going to solve all our problems. So I wish you would talk. You can see I'm doing these mental gymnastic leaps between Hungary and murder and the Bay Area. But one of the things I wanted ask you about is this moment where we get this new technology and it's like, oh yes, this is the magic solution to all of our problems. And I think in part, weren't the people who came up with the lie detector thinking it would be a way to, deal with the problem of not being able to tell if someone was a killer or not? Did they from the beginning have confidence in it, or did they doubt it from the beginning, I guess is what I'm wondering.
So funny, Deborah, I was literally trying to type this question. I didn't even finish it. I'm like, could you talk? Oh yeah, there it is. She's going to ask it. It is a great question, isn't it? Because of like AI and stuff like that.
That's right.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think that when the inventors of the lie detector initially, I think they started that with the noblest intentions. I think they thought that they were doing something good, and I think, these were trained scientists. These were people that knew the scientific method, and they understood like how to assess whether or not a technology was doing the thing that it was supposed to be doing. And I think what happened very quickly was that they realized that actually these machines could not do the things that had been claimed. But by then they were so addicted to the fame and the press coverage and the thrill and the rush of it, and the kind of the theater of it all. And you alluded to magic there, and Leonard Keeler, one of my characters, was a sort of an amateur magician, and he would use kind of sleight of hand tricks and kind of card counting and things like that to prove that the lie detector was doing what he said it was. I kind of in the book try and tie it to as well as magic to sort of to faith in a way, to sort of this notion of And it took me a long time. I spent a long time grappling with this when I was writing the book, of like what exactly I wanted to say, because I didn't want to be anti-science, because I'm a science writer and I believe in science. But I guess what I was trying to say was that, like, if you put these technologies on a pedestal and you treat them as infallible things when they're not, you almost end up building sort of a religion around technology, and you kind of come to believe that technology is this all-powerful thing. And I think that's the trap that we've all fallen into with the lie detector for 100 years, and what we're doing with AI now, to bring up Brandy's point. Like, we're doing exactly the same thing with ChatGPT, where people think that it knows more than it does because of the way it's presented and the kind of theater around it.
And we want to believe it, I think. Speaking of faith and religion, you want to believe that it's going to do these things, right? It's a really interesting connection. Still sticking with that idea of faith, Patti. I mean, there was let's just talk. I don't think I've given you a chance to fully describe the sort of period in which you have these women in rural Hungary networking together in this kind of what I'm going to call a murderous conspiracy, and you can correct me in that if you want. But there was an element of faith to it. There was an element of superstition to the powers of these women. Could you just describe them for us and what they did for a minute?
Well, there was definitely an element of superstition around the midwife, because midwives at that time, and this is not just Hungary, this is all of Europe, that midwives were normally from the Romani community. They were normally card readers, or you went to them to, find your future, read your future. But she would have been the one Romani person who had power in the village. So the rest of them were Calvinists, and so they didn't believe like she believed, but they kind of were awed and sometimes feared the sort of power that she would have. And in Auntie Susie's case, Auntie Susie was our midwife. She had, her faith was different. Her faith was in a lower world, a middle world, an upper world. She had sort of this feeling that, even though she was in the community, she wasn't of this community. She answered to a different power than everybody else did. And so among the women that I wouldn't call them, they were part of a conspiracy because they were trying to solve a problem. Most of them were trying to solve a problem of abuse. And so they were just, more people that did it, they were saying, why became why not? People were getting away with it, and there were no policemen there to kind of stop it. So they were relying on her to help them solve a problem. And the other people, the men, were they after a while, after years and years of finally sort of waking up to things that are going on, they were like, oh, so this midwife is getting away with murder and nobody's doing anything, and she has these other powers, so we're scared of her for that reason too.
And so that element of
conspiracy. It also became a conspiracy of silence in that way, and they just sort of turned away because they didn't know what to do.
And so Patti, interrupting you, I'm sorry. There is a question here from Kristen about the use of anglicized names and your decision to do that. Do you want to talk about that a little bit as well?
Yes, because I stumbled over the Hungarian names. And so I didn't want it to stop people. When you're writing, it's the kind of conflict of you just need to make it easier for the for the reader. And I also found it fairly interesting that certain names were fascinating, that the midwife lived on Orphan Street.
Oh, that is interesting.
The midwife lived on what translated as Orphan Street. There was another woman whose last name translates as pirate. I mean, so there was some of it that I just couldn't resist doing it. I thought, this translates, this is perfect. So it was really, in essence, to just make it easier for people who speak English and don't speak, Hungarian.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I wanted to I jumped in here just real quick because I noticed Kristen had asked a question kind of both of you, of all three of you as authors, but also kind of just in general, why are we as humans or Americans so obsessed with people who get away with crimes. And we actually got an interesting response down here from Jennifer Pierce saying, the fascination is how different their brains are from mine. I'd never be able to live with myself. The guilt and paranoia, even thinking someone is mad at me, is too much. But I thought that was a really interesting question, maybe for the authors to answer too.
Yeah, I mean, why don't you guys? I'm happy to tell you what I think really briefly, and then turn it over to you. I've been working on a book about female poisoners, which I just turned in, yay! And my editor, when I signed the contract for the book, she said, "And I want you to do it in a way that people can understand why someone would become a serial killer." Right? Why would someone do this? And there's a really interesting part, getting to your question, Kristen, of serial killing, in which it's the second kill that matters. So you guys have probably heard this, right? A lot of people just kill once. The decision to kill twice is what puts you over into the line of being a serial killer. So that's kind of what I've looked at. I think almost anyone in the world, in self-defense, right, getting between a really dangerous person and your kids, say, might be able to commit murder. But to do it twice, right, you become something else. And I don't know. I can give you many reasons for people who have killed, but I don't know that someone who wouldn't do that, who would never say, well, that was kind of fun, let's do it again, or that was kind of interesting, let's do it again. I don't think the person who will never do that can ever exactly get that. I mean, that to me, that's one of the great stumbling blocks as we try to figure out murder.
Yeah.
Amit, Patti, you want to address that?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of the people in my book didn't get away with it. Despite the faultiness of the lie detector. One observation I would make is that this is not a new thing. Like we kind of think of the true crime obsession as being a modern phenomenon, but actually what I found kind of going through the archives, and I spent a lot of time reading newspapers from the 1920s and 1930s and going through old magazines and things like that. And this is an eternal thing. We've always been obsessed with crime and crime stories. And if you flick through the San Francisco Chronicle from the 1920s, you'll find pages and pages and pages of scandals and sordid crimes and investigations, and journalists kind of running their own investigations and paying. A lot of the first lie detector tests were funded by the newspapers because they kind of wanted to be the ones to break the story and do the investigation. It was almost like an interactive true crime thing unfolding in real time with their readers. It's not a new phenomenon, that's all I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, I spent so many years working on this book that I was with this question every day. And I felt with Auntie Susie, that's why she was so, it was, I always wondered, when did she shift? Was she sort of born this way? Or was there a shift, and when was that shift? And I don't know the answer to that question. I would love to sit down and sort of talk to her about it. I know with the women, I mean, a lot of them just killed once or just allowed to conspire with her to kill their husband. And so that was different. They were solving a problem. But with the midwife, she killed again and again and again. And I can only say with her, at a certain point, she kind of reminded me of Tony Soprano. She had sort of this mafia-like feeling about her. And as her great niece said, for her, it was a business. And so, again, are they made or are they born? I don't know. But I think what contributed to it in this situation was that she had always been a second-class citizen because she was a Romani person. And then when she gets into this position of power and she's helping people, I always have a trouble with that, but she was helping people, but she was not altruistic about it. It was a business. She had a payment plan. She had all that kind of stuff set up. But I do think in this case, there was nobody catching them. And so more and more and more, she kept getting away with it. And I think we like to read it because we're always curious about our darker side, but it's not as threatening when we're not looking at ourselves. You're looking at it through, there's structure around it. There's a framework around, there's a screen door, so you can kind of keep it shut. So it's sort of a way of pondering, like, would I do it? Wouldn't I do it? What would push me to the edge? Or Who do I know? Somebody who's walking around that I say hi to every day that's murdered somebody?
Probably.
And I don't know it? Right.
Probably,
yeah.
right. So, did you want to add anything to that, Amit? Or
No, I think that was fascinating. Thank you, Patty.
I thought that made a really good point, Patty. You know, it's interesting. One of the things you reminded me of is people who study psychopathy will talk about primary and secondary psychopaths, and the primary psychopaths are the ones who are born, and the secondary psychopaths are shaped by their environment and their lives and their childhood. And you do see, and you reminded me of it with a lot of murderers. Their need to have some control. They had a life with no control. They were put down. They were dismissed. They were, and this allows them to feel like it's weird, right? It's a twisted way of doing it, but it is a way of feeling that you have some control. As I make myself sound incredibly creepy, right?
Well, we are talking about murder. This is the theme.
This is exactly right.
yeah.
So, but you open the case, or your lie detector case really opens with a, you know, to me it was like, who's the bad guy here kind of case, right? And could you, and when they're trying to figure out whether Henry Wilkins is a killer or not, right? I sort of ended up feeling like he probably was. But could you talk a little bit about that case and how, you know, a really complicated murder can kind of push us in directions like trying to find a way to detect a murderer?
Yeah, so just in very, very brief summary, Henry Wilkins was a mechanic in San Francisco in the 1920s, and he was driving home from a camping trip with his family when the car got pulled over by bandits, and his wife ended up getting shot in the altercation. And it transpires over the following weeks and months that actually he may have hired the bandits to kill his wife. They were having some marital problems, and the evidence seemed to suggest that perhaps he had been involved, or that he was not being honest with the police about his prior relationship with the people that have been identified as shooting his wife. So the lie detector kind of comes into it at that point where they've got these kind of conflicting stories. So on the one hand, you've got the kind of culprits kind of saying that Henry was the one who had like set up the whole thing, and you've got Henry saying, oh, he had nothing to do with it and it was just a random shooting, and that's where the lie detector kind of comes into it. And it, you know, kind of, and I had to be very like kind of aware of the fact that obviously Henry was kind of found innocent in a trial and a retrial, and you know, kind of looking at it 100 years later, looking at all the kind of newspaper reports and piecing it all together, you kind of think, well, he obviously was involved in it. It's just, you know, because the decisions that he was making made no sense at the time, but you then kind of have to balance that with the fact that, well, he was found innocent by a jury of his peers at least once, and then the second one was kind of a hung jury. So I kind of tried to leave it open in the book, I guess, and I kind of tried to leave it like relatively open without trying to editorialize too much. And I think and I guess the point that I was trying to make in the book was not so much about whether he did it or not. It's more about the fact that the machine should not have been the thing that was making that decision, I guess, is the kind of point I wanted to make. And what actually ended up happening was that this machine that was designed with good intentions and was meant to kind of meant to provide clarity just actually ended up muddying the waters even further, because we don't know to what extent, you know, the fact that he passed the lie detector test was splashed all over the papers. We don't know to what extent that influenced the trial, influenced the jury. You know, did the introduction of this machine actually mean that he got away with something that he wouldn't have got away with under normal circumstances? And I guess those are the kind of questions I wanted to raise, you know, not so much. And I guess it kind of speaks to the point of the book, right? We want there to be a clean and clear answer, but actually sometimes things are a bit murkier than that. And actually the lie detector ended up contributing to that murkiness in a lot of cases. And, you know, it's kind of, I guess that's kind of the point the book's trying to make more broadly as well, but it also happened in a specific case.
You know, I want to stick with that. Oh, wait. Amit, do you feel like the eye-focused detection tools / AI are in any way less junk science than the old style?
So I actually, yeah, as part of the research for the book, I had an eye tracking based lie detector test performed on me, which was an eye-opening experience, if you will. Yeah, I think if you take the kind of companies that are doing these tests at face value, they're more accurate than the lie detector, than the polygraph. But I think the question is like how much accuracy is required for something like this, something that could send a person to prison or to death row. They kind of say, oh, we're 96% accurate. Well, okay, but that means that like 4 of every 100 people that you send to prison shouldn't be in prison, right? Like that's a very, very high number. So I think even if these technologies are better than chance or are better than humans at detecting lies, I think the problem is that they need to be so accurate and they need to have such a high bar, and it's such a high bar to clear for them to be used. And I think it's tempting when technology comes into a field, it's tempting for people that in that field to kind of put more weight behind that technology than is deserved. And you see this with a lot of true crime documentaries with things like blood spatter analysis, where you kind of have these forensic consultants who kind of come in, and because they've got PhDs or doctor in front of their name, so much weight gets put on their evidence, and it's led to some really, really kind of horrible miscarriages of justice, where people have kind of thought, well, okay, this new science of whether it's lie detection or blood spatter or whatever it might be is it is a genuine science, and it kind of it messes things up.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm having trouble keeping up a little bit with I get so wrapped up in the discussion, I miss some of the questions that are actually being proposed over here. But people are talking a little bit about, everything seems has kind of two-edged side to it. And I also have a couple more questions for Patti that popped up that I missed, which I will throw up in a little bit. But since we are at halftime of our show, it's probably time for us to lighten things up a little bit with a brief moment of comedy, where, just in case you haven't had enough of me, there are 2 of me in this particular comedy sketch. So, maybe take it away.
Oh, hey! Haven't seen you in a while. Do you want your usual? Here you go. Please, a large one. I'm trying to finish my books before book club. What are you reading these days? It's always something. I'm reading this book about women who poison their husbands, and sometimes other women's husbands too. Actually, they just like to poison men in general.
I never heard of such things.
Oh yeah, they got away with it for a long time.
I bet they did. I mean, how did they get caught?
I guess if you're gonna poison 400 people the same way, it starts to look a little bit suspicious.
400 is a lot. I mean, that is like a hard record to break.
Well, sure, if you were trying to poison somebody, I mean...
Oh, it's a big gift. Your coffee?
Well done. Well done. I mean, dual roles, but props the lady paws for the prep fall too.
Yeah, right. He did a good job there. He was having a moment. Lady Paws being AKA Mark, if you don't know Lady Paws.
Okay.
So we bunch more questions have popped up, and
I wanted to propose a sketch to you, Brandy, where we put you on a lie detector. But I honestly couldn't think, what were we gonna trap you with? Like what was gonna be the gotcha?
Yeah.
Like you're a pretty open book with us. I don't think there's anything.
Yeah, like you know what? I don't know that I know how to. I've never had to lie, so actually, I have a really funny story that I'm not allowed to tell you because of an NDA. But yeah, stuff happens. But like I'm really bad at lying. Like I'm no good at it at all. So I either just have to not say things. That's why I put that comment up that Kristen made about the woman who like tricked the lie detector by not actually looking at the card. That'd be me. I'd be like, make all sorts. The lamp was broken, rather than actually saying that.
I'd like to put these 2 together. I would have loved to hook my women up to the lie detector test and see what.
Oh, yeah.
Bad.
No kidding. So I found that other comment, by the way. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
No, roll with it. I got my time to shine later.
That's true. I saw this question earlier and then I missed it. Did you try, Patty, this is from Leanne, you said that you tried to bring back the DNA of the village in your story by writing as a true person, but researching as a journalist, and that she thought that was quite interesting. And I wondered if you wanted to say something about that combo.
Yeah, when I first started this, back when I was like in third grade or something, it took me 14 years to write this book. And it was years of research and, living in the village, living in Solnoke, hiring translators, hiring a historian of Solnoke. So I first approached it as a journalist, and then I felt like a detective. And my first attempts at writing it were much more removed and more clinical, more journalistic as the writing of it. And it wasn't really working for me. I needed the women to get up and be able to walk around. And so I took the risk, I think, the controversial risk of sort of writing it as a novel, but it's all true. So that's what I wanted to get at the we can talk about the statistics and we can try to bring up the whys, but these were lives. And over the years of getting to know these women, as I felt like I came to know them, I felt like the way I needed to approach it was to really try to get at the emotional truth. I know that's impossible, but I think that's what it was, like bringing up the DNA, not just looking at the facts, but looking at the whys and the hows. And these, you can look at it and say these women murdered a lot of men, but you can also look at it and say these were women who were desperate. These were young men who were damaged even more by fighting in World War I and coming back and bringing all that violence back into a very tiny house. So those were sort of the things I felt like I needed to get at that I couldn't do if I took a drier approach.
And just to follow up on that with the question I'm seeing here, Patty from Kristen, how did you find the story for the coda of your book? It was wild.
Well, I mean, I spent, like I said, this was 14 years seed to fruit writing this book. So there was just so much information. There was so much there that I just wanted to, at the end, I just had this purge, this diarrhea of stuff that I wanted to put in that I couldn't put in the regular, context of the story as I was telling it.
No, I totally get that. I want to take us off in a slightly different direction by telling you that last night when I was in Chicago, I'm in a slightly spacey headspace here in Boston right now. I was staying with a friend and she wanted to watch a 1980s movie called Jagged Edge, which I highly do not recommend. But it has Glenn Close as an attorney and it was a murder case, but they immediately rush to do a lie detector test for the suspected murderer. And he passes it completely, by the way, Amit, and then, of course, he is the murderer. But it made me think about, and I wanted to bring this up with you guys in very different ways, the power, the sort of social entertainment power of the way that we see crime and stories amplified. Do you think that entertainment and popular fiction and all of this turn the lie detector into this invincible machine in a way that we might well see today with something like AI, the magic of GPT? Can you talk about just the power of social culture or culture in driving these ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the lie detector in particular, it was in many ways a creation of the media, largely. Like I think it was it was born out of, it was popularized in the newspapers. It was then kind of spread further by television, movies, and actually the creators of the lie detector ended up, like Leonard Keeler in particular, ended up playing a lie detector examiner, a polygraph examiner in movies, like playing himself. He had like a kind of like agony aunt style like radio show where he would take listeners and then he would go and almost like proto Jerry Springer almost, where he'd kind of take the lie detector out and kind of help people solve their problems or solve crimes or whatever. So there was sort of And even today, like it's it appears on those kind of daytime talk shows, and it it's been used controversially in British television a lot as well. And I think me and my wife, over the kind of 3 or 4 years I was working in the book, we'd roll our eyes because every time we watched a true crime show, the lie detector would pop up. Every time we watched a crime drama, it would pop up, and you would just get to like episode 4 of a 6-part series on Netflix, and it's like, oh, here we go, here's the polygraph again, getting wheeled out, and it kind of became like an on-running joke because it's always there, and it's and the way it's used is so fascinating because it's used as a it derives its power from its cultural weight, if that makes sense. So like it works because people think that it works, and so the more it's kind of subsumed into the media, the more power it has on the people in the interrogation room. You know what I mean? And there's this famous story from that's kind of referenced in The Wire about how these cops in Baltimore put a suspect's hand on a photocopier and told the suspect it was a lie detector on a Xerox machine, and then just got the Xerox machine to spit out pieces of paper with "he's lying" written on it, and that worked. It obviously it wasn't detecting whether or not the person was lying, but because the person didn't know that and kind of thought that this machine was in fact a lie detector when it was actually just a Xerox machine, it got the confession that they were looking for. And this is the kind of, it's all about the theatre, and it's all about, and it draws its power from its media representation, which I think is fascinating.
In which the media is not a beloved character in this. Did you want to jump in, Davey?
I always try to Google these things in the background. I was trying to find the TV show you were at. So Leonard actually was on TV doing this. You're saying?
Yeah, I think it was a movie. Okay. I think it was like 1940s. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I'll find it.
Okay. I found a PBS series called Watch the Lie Detector, but I don't think that was it.
No, there is a clip of him actually. I'll dig it out if you bear with me.
When we were proposing other movies that would theme with your book, we did throw out Basic Instinct and Meet the Parents for iconic lie detector scenes.
Of course, yeah. Meet the Parents is a good one.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you didn't think of Jagged Edge.
I gotta say, you didn't enjoy it, but it's got an 81% on Rotten Tomatoes, 6.5 on IMDb. So some people like Jagged Edge.
I mean, it's very twisty, right? But I immediately came home and trapped my husband complaining about everything that I thought was wrong with this movie. So
maybe there's just some big Glenn Close fans out there.
I was the wrong person to watch. And also, I hate the fact that in the 1980s, every single man has incredibly styled hair that is fixed in place with hairspray, right? It's just so annoying to me. Anyway, so I want to jump over to we were actually thought that lie detectors were faultless. I think that's 100% true. There's another aspect of this entertainment of murder and crime that I want to bring up because it really struck me in your book, Patti, that once these women were caught and brought to trial, they almost became an entertainment spectacle. I believe people sold tickets to go see them. Could you talk a little bit about that and the way sort of cultural entertainment drives our response to this kind of thing?
Yeah, what was interesting to me, even when I was researching it, was that this could have happened today, the same kind of response. So the media was there from everywhere. New York Times, Guardian, Chicago Daily Tribune. This was 1929. And all these reporters and their stringers just descended on the village. And so, they had guards at the village to kind of keep people in. And so it was unbelievable. But they also had their best writers on it. They had their Hemingways who were reporting it. And so they were writing in this really, literary style, but just like attacking the women. One writer called them in one of the largest newspapers in Budapest. He called them dissolute sluts and bitches.
Whoa.
And not just these women, all village women, that it was bound to happen. And all peasant women, this was just bound to happen because that's how they are. That's what he said. So it created this outrage. And so, yes, the court sold tickets to control the crowds. Lots of women, lots of sort of high fashion women came in from Budapest to witness the trials. And they would stand on the steps. And as the prosecutor came in, they would, try to grab his attention. So it was an enormous spectacle. So, they had that against them. And they had the press against them. They had, they did these things, but it then became this greater circus beyond that, where it was just, the appetite was huge for it, for witnessing the trials, reading the newspapers. It was just huge.
I don't think that's changed at all.
Right? No, it hasn't changed at all. And that's what was so interesting to me. It's like, well, O.J. Simpson, every human being is glued to the TV in 95, when the verdict was read. That was no different. Absolutely no different. Watching that slow chase, So I thought, people are people. It doesn't matter if it was 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. We're still gonna be curious about this and create these gladiator type things.
I think that's absolutely right. Does it improve things at all that we're that interested in this? So let's go back to, do you see our kind of fascination with what I'm now going to call the other, right? We tend to see murderers as the other. I think that probably sounds a little smug, but tends to be true, right? Does our fascination with that, our interest in it, become part of the way we punish people, right?
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if we do. I wonder if that is the way we do it, because it's another way to set ourselves apart and to feel better and to feel, I didn't do that. Nobody I know would do that, And so that's one way I'm good. That's one way I'm golden. Maybe that's what we do. And kind of feel a little bit of relief, maybe. I don't know, that that we would never do that. And you think no matter how bad poorly you performed in your life, you haven't done that. And so you are willing to just show up in huge numbers to watch the trial or watch the hanging of somebody. Oh,
yes. Yeah. Was the lie detector used very publicly? I'm asking a kind of obvious question, I guess. But the lie detector, the announcement of lie detector results, do you see that as falling into the same? We're going to call you out publicly and make you a public exhibit. You see what I'm asking?
100%. Yeah, it was always kind of front page news. It was the kind of that a crime would happen, and then the papers would be competing to kind of find evidence, and then they'd be competing to kind of get their man in the room for the lie detector test. And in the book I talk about how, like, if you're doing a polygraph test properly according to how it's supposed to be done, it should be a quiet room and just the investigator and the suspect. And actually what you ended up with was this literal kind of circus of like dozens of people all crowding around and flashbulbs going off and things like that. And then it became, it was like trial by media, right? And that's not a new thing either. That's kind of what it was, and the lie detector just fed into that.
I kind of liked the woman, I'm blanking on her name in your book, who got really ticked off during the whole process and tried to break the machine and was yelling, right?
Yeah, Helen Graham. Yeah, that was a really early one, actually. And I think there was a lot of cases where people kind of immediately saw through it, or sort of, but it was kind of designed to get an emotional reaction out of people. That was kind of how it worked all the time. It was sleight of hand and applying pressure, and it was a kind of psychological tool of coercion rather than a machine that detected lies, right? It was a very, very creative use of a stethoscope and a blood pressure monitor, essentially.
Yeah, we actually had a lie detector test at the Dittrich Museum that I worked at, and that's all it was. It was just blood pressure. So it was.
That's all it is today. That's all it still is. And actually, the technology is literally the same as it was 100 years ago. It's just plugged into a computer now instead of a pen scratching on a piece of paper. It's just
Davies found the movie.
Well, we got to Amit credit. He found it. He did his background research and put it in our private chat. So I figured I'd pull it up really quick so we could see the Keeler.
Yeah,
movie.
so that's
sorry to the
that's Leonard
podcast
Keeler.
listeners.
Yeah, that's Leonard Keeler on the right there of this clip. So one of the kind of popularizers of the lie detector, playing himself in a movie, conducting a polygraph test.
I mean,
play myself in a movie.
That's me just stressed in traffic. I mean, you know.
I thought
someone
you did
pointed
the
out
work to find
earlier.
it.
Yeah, someone pointed out earlier that so I'm neurodivergent, I'm autistic, and that the lie detectors were not really set up to test for things like that. So it's also interesting that there's some we test for very specific things.
Well, see, I was born Catholic, so I have all that Catholic guilt that you'd admit to something that you didn't even do. So I don't know where
you're done for it. You're done for it. Yeah.
You'd be a terrible test subject, Patty.
Yeah, you'd throw it all off, right?
Speaking of testing,
I was just nice, Stevie.
We've got a quiz for you. We always end our show with a quiz for our authors, and it's themed around something in your book, a thread I pull on, something. So I kind of split it in half for the two of you. So we're going to do a 4-question quiz, 2 for Amit, 2 for Patty, but you can both participate, and everybody participates. The peculiars in the chat will participate. So the quiz for Amit, we are calling "Meanwhile at the Hall of Justice." As soon as I heard Hall of Justice in your book, I thought, well, let's have some fun with the fictional Hall of Justice, the one that belongs to the comic book team, the Justice League. So 2 questions for you. The Hall of Justice is the fictional headquarters of the Justice League. The building was first introduced when an adaptation of the comic book was made for TV. The building is based on what actual train station? Is it A, Grand Central Terminal in New York, B, Cincinnati's Union Terminal, or C, Washington Union Station? The iconic.
This is a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my knowledge of American railway stations is somewhat limited. But I think that Grand Central is probably... if I had to guess, I'd say Cincinnati. Just because I think Grand Central is a bit too, I guess, like... Baroque, is that the right word? The kind of a bit more kind of fancy, and the Justice League maybe had something a bit more brutalist, a bit more modern. But
Girl's thinking A. He's guessing B, Cincinnati. The answer is yes, Cincinnati's Union Terminal Station, which you can see there in the photo for our viewers. They didn't mean to, like, they made almost an exact replica. When they proposed it, it was like, theme it off this, and then the artist just did it. But it was done by Hanna-Barbera Cartoons, which was based in Cincinnati. So that's
what's hilarious, of course, is I've actually been there, and I did not see I've been there. I should have known.
I believe it's now a train museum or something. It's not an actual functioning train station anymore. Nice fountain shape.
Yes, it does have a specific kind of.
Again, podcast listeners, this is why you got to check out the video sometimes.
You got to check out the video, guys.
Question number 2. The Hall of Justice contains the Trouble Alert computer, a computerized monitoring station that would warn the heroes of a new threat. On the animated show, it was voiced by which radio legend? Was it A, Casey Kasem, B, Wolfman Jack, or C, Alan Freed? Which classic radio disc jockey?
I have no idea. I'm completely lost here. If I had to,
I didn't realize I made such Americanized quiz for you. Sorry.
Wolfman Jack is an excellent name. It sounds like you should remember him.
Casey Kasem was pretty good too.
Yeah.
I will tell you. I'll tell you who the person who did the voice. The person who did the voice also did the voice of Robin on the show, Dick Grayson. Batman's sidekick.
Okay. Interesting. Leanne's going with A. Kristen's saying Casey Kasem doesn't have an ounce of alert in his voice. It's true. Casey Kasem, he kind of sounds like this.
So I'm guessing it's going to be C then? I don't know.
All right, he's guessing Alan Freed. All right, the answer is the legendary Casey Kasem.
Yes,
Casey
Kasem. Oh my gosh.
Bringing you the top 40 countdown.
I love Casey Kasem, but I just can't. I can hear him as Robin. I can't hear him as the alert computer.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on. Patty's turn. Although you can keep playing. So the quiz we did for Patty is called "We Love
We do have to get
All
Sadie's
Types
comment
of
in there.
Brandy." brandies that host peculiar book clubs and write peculiar books, and brandies that we drink. So it just felt like drinking a brandy was such a theme in the book. I mean, they put so much of it away. So brandy is a liquor produced by distilling wine. It can also be obtained from distilling any mash or wine of any fruit. That product is called blank. Is it A, pulp, B, pomace, or C, dregs?
Okay, so I'm quickly looking in my dictionary here because I don't know what pomace is. So can I cheat?
Because I think it's pulp, but I could be totally wrong. And Leanne says B.
Take a guess. The peculiars will help you out. The peculiars.
Okay, can I do
help
a
you out.
lifeline? Okay, B.
Yeah, you can do
Okay.
a lifeline to the peculiars.
B.
All right,
Leanne
Leanne.
says B, so we're going with B.
Naturally, it's B.
Naturally, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, the answer is B. It is
Whoa,
pomace. That's the
yes.
product. So the reading the process of how they make brandy seems quite intense, and I understand why it's a highly regarded drink. But yeah, they like kind of remove the liquid, remove the water. You're left with this pulpy type substance that they call pomace. The bottom of a wine, what's left in the bottom of a wine barrel or a wine of glass, is sometimes called the dregs. That's where that term comes from.
Yeah. Now, pomace, if you think about it, I think it's because they've pulverized the romance, right? So basically it's pomace.
But when you add the liquid back in it, you get all different aromas and flavors than they anticipated.
But
very nice.
These three together would make a good band name.
Nice.
Pomace and dregs.
Pomace dregs.
Yeah, nice.
Or the band members' names, perhaps.
Right.
All
If
right,
you got a new baby coming, pulp. No.
Question number 2. Brandy has a traditional age grading system, which marking on the label would indicate the longest aged brandy. Is it A, a VS, B, VSOP, or C, XO? So if you saw that label for brandy, what label are you looking at to make sure you get the longest aged?
Can I get like a hypnotic regression or something? Because I think I can go back and get the right answer. Is it VSOP?
She's guessing B. Leanne also guessed B.
Okay.
Well, give him a chance. Did you find that they were drinking a lot of brandy in the book? Did you realize how many times you wrote the word brandy?
Yes. But
Okay.
they weren't real specialists. This were, squeezed from the backyard, apricots and plums.
So the answer is actually XO. So I wrote it out here for you. So VS, very special. It means it's been aged at least 2 years in a cask. VSOP, very superior old pale, aged at least 4 years in a cask. And XO is extra old, aged at least 6 years. There was another one that's used only by cognac. That means like aged over 10 years.
Right.
Yeah. I know that one. Guess what, folks? I'm extra old.
Yeah, I'm XO.
That's my age.
Right.
I'm an XO at this point.
Thank you for playing the quiz. I know it's not always, it goes every which direction. So I appreciate hanging in there and playing the quiz.
We love the quiz because the quiz basically never has really anything to do with the books. It's like it's the daily signature. I really like it.
You put the ideas in my mind and I run with them. And I learned a lot about brandy. I have a new appreciation for it. So
I have a lot of brandy in my house. I mean, obviously, but also I have a lot of brandy in my cognac. I'm kind of a cognac hound, and I'm a big fan of Remy Martin's VSOP.
But you don't have the secret ingredient that the midwife
What is the
had.
secret? No, because then you mean the white powder stuff? No, that'd be bad, right?
I will say, can I just say that like for the killers in Amit's book, I didn't really like feel for them. But I gotta say, for the women in your book, Patti, I was kind of rooting for them at times. Like, there's a lot of bad husbands in that town. And there were times I didn't really feel bad about what they were doing.
Right. There were a lot of bad husbands, but there were being the operative word there.
Yeah.
Ryan says it's like, wait, don't tell me, Chris.
Yes, yes, wait, don't tell me had a lot of influence on the quiz. Yes, it did.
Oh my goodness. Well, we have reached the end of our evening, believe it or not. This was so much fun. We could, every time we do one of these, I think we need to start making these shows like an hour and a half long. Except that Davey and I don't have an hour and a half. But it's so wonderful that you guys could be on here. Deb, you were amazing. Amit, Patti, you were both amazing. I would love to have any of you back on the show anytime. It's just a wonderful thing to have you here.
Thank you so much for having us on.
This has been really fun. Thank you so much.
Certainly. Amit, I hope you get good sleeps now. Sorry that we kept you up so late.
No,
you
it's
and
a
Sadie.
delight to be kept up by someone who's not. We just had a baby for listeners, so delight to be kept up by someone who's not screaming in my face.
Well, yes, that's the context is good here. The context is good. Well, thanks again, once again, and I shall leave with our signature line, which is, thank you for joining us at a place where, if you're weird, you're family.
You got the blue bottle blues when you wake up in the night. Don't make a big mistake, 'cause you can never make it right. When you reach out for the vial, feel the ridges in the glass. It's a matter of survival, baby, better watch your back. There is no